Looks like the Doc's up to a new artistic vision. I'd mock, but the last time he indulged in the arts he captivated a whole species, so maybe we'll wait and see. Let's move to astrometrics instead and find out what Operation Watson is. An extension of the Pathfinder project from the looks of things, as the screen shows us the Murdoch Muppet and Admiral Paris. Except he's not Admiral Paris, at least not anymore. You see, he's been claimed by a patron of the channel and will now be known as Bad Dadmiral Paris, by order of Admiral Ross Slavin. Looks like Murdoch and company have been busy since we last saw them, as we've now got live two-way communication with them. It's only for 11 minutes a day, but that beats the piss out of letters once a month. At least it does for those lucky enough to be selected to make calls. We've decided that Voyager has 146 crew this week, so giving everybody a fair share would come out to around 5 seconds each. Instead, we're drawing lots for a randomly assigned queue and giving people a full 3 minutes when it's their turn. Quite what Neelix, Seven and Ramrod will do with theirs, I'm not sure, but maybe they can trade them. That's what Kim's hoping will happen with the Doc. He wanted to call his mum this week, but drew a high number. The Doc, on the other hand, managed to pull number 1. I wonder if those holographic eyes see through fabric. The Doc turns him down as he says he has his own important call to make, which is curious, but Paris throws Kim a bone with his own ticket for tomorrow. I guess he's not in a rush to speak with Bad Admiral Paris, despite the progress they've made. The Doc's important call is to an unknown Bolian chap who talks about distributing the Doc's work. They're cut off as we're getting into the details, his 3 minutes having elapsed, but the secret is revealed down in sickbay as he can't wait to share the news. He's managed to get a publishing deal for his holonovel called Photons Be Free, and after only the tiniest convincing, agrees to let Paris take a look. It begins with a scene of the Doc writing about himself using a quill and ink, though this only qualifies as the second most cumbersome writing implement on Voyager. Season 4's Unforgettable, ironically titled for more reasons than one, showed Chakotay using what looked like a chonky meat thermometer to make notes. Anywho, he spots Paris and introduces the premise. Paris will be playing a holographic doctor aboard a starship, one that's just been farted onto the other side of the galaxy. Sounds oddly familiar. I wonder if the Doc plans to write 100 of them without fundamentally changing anything significant over the course of his adventures. The story proper starts in sickbay after Paris skips the other 10 minutes of preamble from StoryDoc. Things are in a bit of a state with lots of injured crew. They only get worse when a Bajoran with a facial tattoo brings in another injury, one that looks a lot like Paris with a middle management moustache, and orders that he be treated first. Paris declines as there's another patient that needs immediate surgery, but Bajotay traps him behind a force field and tells him he's just a piece of shit machine and to do as he's told. A bit on the nose perhaps, but not entirely removed from reality. Janeway, this time with dark hair, arrives to find out what's going on. After being brought up to speed, she solves the problem by pulling her gun and murderizing the critical patient. Bit lazy of the Doc to just use Janeway's real personality. Paris is telling the others about the Doc's new holonovel and the creative liberties he's taken with his obvious inspiration. Kim's concerned people will link it to them, and Paris tends to agree, suggesting he should have a word with Janeway. B'Elanna thinks he's overreacting though, so is invited to test the program for herself. We join her as Moustache Paris is telling her there's an emergency in engineering and she needs to get down there. Thankfully, she has a handy mobile emitter. B'Elanna arrives to find no emergency and a human version of herself who's a right proper arsehole and tells her she's just a machine. Again, not entirely inaccurate. Why did Moustache Paris lie? So he could engage in sexy times with a patient, obviously. Extramarital sexy times too, as this version is already married. Maybe holographic girls have a thing for facial hair. Neelix's turn, and he's having a chat with Janeway in a gun-strewn ready room. Not gonna lie, that bit got a chuckle out of me. She's complaining that Neelix's program is full of useless data, like music and dreams and a holographic wangus. Attempts to assert his right to learn fall on deaf ears, and he's taken away by Beard, Vok and Trill Kim to be reprogrammed. Real Kim's turn, and he's being escorted by Beard, Vok and Trill Kim, who's worried about fiddling with the Doc, not because it's wrong, but because he's a hypochondriac. They're met as they leave the lift by Number of Number, a redhead with Borg jewellery, who tries to free the Doc and help him escape. Where to is never explained, but we'll assume their shuttle bay is as poorly secured as it is in our version. It fails anyway, and he's recaptured. Janeway's turn to be the Doc, and we've moved to sickbay. All this trouble has caused dark-haired Janeway to decide that the Doc should be restored to factory settings. An impassioned speech from Number is ignored, and the program fades to black. An epilogue from StoryDoc explains that this was fiction, mostly, but provides an insight into what life is like for holograms. Based on Janeway's reaction, life for the real Doc is about to get a little bit worse. The Doc's adamant that he's not trying to draw a parallel to Voyager. After all, his ship, which carries a crew of nearly identical people and underwent the same catastrophe, is called the Vortex, completely different. And it's not like Janeway's ever executed a member of the crew, is it? The argument that minor changes mean nobody will make a connection to the real Voyager crew doesn't convince anybody except himself, but that doesn't matter. He's not releasing it for himself, he says, but rather to highlight the treatment of the EMH programs that are being used for menial labour in the Alpha Quadrant, and he's not willing to change any of it to save hurt feelings. I wonder how he reconciled that against doing no harm. Hurt feelings are the theme for the day. Kim's phone call home cuts out halfway through due to interference, and he takes his frustration out on Seven by pointing out that she has nobody to call. Bit of a dick move, son, not least of which because the last time a family member tried to contact her, it turned out to be a fictional aunt created by a galactic Venus flytrap. Speaking of dicks, the Doc plans to make some final adjustments to his holonovel, only to discover it's been replaced. Story Paris appears in Story Doc's place and tells the Doc that he'll be playing the assistant to a real arsehole of a doctor on board the starship Voyager, and the holodeck's locked too, so suck it up. The doctor for the starship Voyager looks quite similar to our own, though a slight modification makes him legally distinct if our own Doc's argument is being used. Just as well, really. Who'd want to be associated with an angry, lecherous predator who drugs his patient with an aphrodisiac? The Doc finds Paris afterwards and makes his outrage known, partly thinking his novel's been erased and partly because Comb Over Doc was clearly based on him. The former's not true, as Paris made a backup, and the latter uses the argument that they've all been trying to make the Doc understand since they found out about his novel. It's not a subtle way of making him understand, but it is effective. Neelix is taking a different approach. He's come to sickbay under the pretense of asking the Doc how to publish a cookbook, which is a terrible fucking idea, by the way, and definitely not something he should ever do, but that's just a cover to start a conversation. He says he loved the Doc's holonovel and wants his story told. A shame his friends are so upset by it, especially when some modification to make the characters more distinct would solve the problem. All he'd need to do is delay the publication slightly, then everybody could celebrate his success without reservation. Neelix's call time, freely given, lets the Doc contact his publisher and request a delay. The publisher clearly disagrees, but the Doc's been persuaded and insists. News of the Doc's change of heart is received well by those affected, who thank him for making the gesture. And another gesture is to ask Paris, our resident holodeck expert, to lend a hand on the rewrite, and also insult him. He might be too busy to help. B'Elanna's received an unexpected letter from her estranged father, the one who fucked off when she was a kid. He wants to talk, but B'Elanna's disinclined to agree. Some words from Paris change her mind, perhaps because he started on the path of reconciliation with his own father and wants to see the same for her. She's frosty during the call, but I think that's fair on account of him being a complete and utter cock. And he seems to agree. When she bluntly asks him what he wants, he admits he was shit and says he wants to try and fix it. As time runs out on the call, she agrees to write to him. It's not enough to hand in her shit parent support group membership card, but it's a start. Back on Earth, in the Starfleet Communications building that still has the same windows illuminated from several months ago during Inside Man, we have a problem. There's a new holonovel doing the rounds, says the Murdoch Muppet, and it was written by a certain holographic doctor. Bad Admiral Paris gives Janeway a call to find out what's going on. Odd thing, though, the Doc hasn't sent out the revised version yet, so it shouldn't have been released. Let's ask the publisher, shall we? Yes, he released it, and no, he won't recall it. See, authors might get a say on what happens to their work, but the Doc is a hologram, and as far as Federation law is concerned, he can go fuck himself. Tuvok's suggestion that we might have ways to suppress the novel will only serve to make it look even more incriminating than it already does. Besides, this publisher dickhead has insulted one of Janeway's people, so that makes it her fight now. After all, he has the same rights as the rest of the crew. Well, as long as you ignore not being permitted quarters over the last 4 years, or the multiple times he's been used as self-destructing data storage. Apart from those things, he's just like the others. And that's why we're going to fight the publisher with law and shit. It's time for court, and Tuvok's making his case to the publisher and a judge of sorts. We've also got the Murdoch Muppet and Bad Admiral Paris sitting in, possibly to validate their fees for appearing in the episode. Tuvok manages to establish that the Doc is the author, and that the work is an original creation, but the judge points out that any law he references in regards to rights only applies to people. The Doc, as far as their legal system is concerned, isn't one. That's a slight problem, and Tuvok is honest about the case turning to shit. Tuvok does have a solution, though. If the Doc isn't a person, he couldn't have entered into an agreement in the first place. That would mean adopting the position that the Doc isn't a person, though, an idea for which nobody has an appetite. Instead, Janeway suggests showing the ways in which the Doc is more than his original programming. Seven explains how the Doc helped her adapt and explore her humanity. Kim testifies that expanding beyond his initial purpose was the Doc's idea, and the Murdoch Muppet points out that he risked himself to travel back to the Alpha Quadrant to treat his creator. Perhaps the most compelling argument is Janeway's, though. Presumably in reference to the time he joined holographic freedom fighters, she tells the judge that he went against her orders. Not a desirable outcome, but all the more indisputable as proof of his individuality because of it. The judge listens to all of these things and tells them that they'll have his decision in 2 days. While we wait for the judgment, life goes on. Seven finds Kim in the mess hall and, possibly due to realizing the importance of family now the Doc is under attack, tries to give Kim her call time so he can finish his conversation with his mum. In fairness to Kim, he admits he acted like a dick and declines the offer, suggesting Seven should find a family member on Earth and try contacting them instead. Seven's aunt is called Irene, and this one at least has the benefit of being real. She also knew Seven as a child, describing her as a stubborn perfectionist. It's not all from being in the Borg, then? Despite the call being a bit awkward, and Irene calling her Annika, Seven seems to appreciate the value of it. And the judge has appreciated the value of everybody's testimony too. While he's not willing to consider the Doc a person, primarily because that's a big old can of worms and he's a fucking coward, he is willing to make a ruling that the Doc is an artist and should be afforded rights as such. Feels like a complete fudge to me, but it's a win of sorts. All copies of the holonovel are to be recalled, much to the annoyance of the publisher, though the Doc struggles to be entirely upbeat under the circumstances. Still, it'll give him a chance to make those amendments and republish it. Given all the noise this version made, I don't think finding somebody else to take him on will be difficult. Which is why, a few months later, we join some repurposed EMH programs working in a mine. Their regular trips to a holographic lab for diagnostics have taken a curious turn, word of a certain novel called Photons Be Free having spread among the workers, and we leave the Doc's brothers to learn about the concept of emancipation as we fly away. Huzzah! It's the self-referential episode, the one that shows do when they want to join in on taking the piss out of themselves. Stargate SG-1 had Wormhole Extreme, Supernatural had The French Mistake, and Voyager has this. To be fair, they're far more inventive than a clip show, and after more than 150 episodes, I think the crew have earned the right to join in on the mockery. There is a touch of tonal whiplash as a result, though, Paris with a porno tash played alongside the Doc's fight for equality. And that fight has been a long time coming. We've watched it happen in slow motion on Voyager, to a certain extent anyway. Janeway claiming she sees the Doc as a person hasn't changed her stance on Quarters, for example. But this is the first time we've taken that argument to the Alpha Quadrant. Which is a bit odd when you think about it. The Doc's the first member of the Voyager crew to make it back there, acting as their formal representative of sorts during that first trip. To be so casually dismissed as simply an emergency medical hologram when he's demonstrably performed outside of that role seems inconsistent. Perhaps my previous suggestion that details had been hushed up because of the Marquis situation would account for it, but the question of how contact was made would be one garnering significant interest from the public. Anywho, the matter of synthetic rights isn't new. In fact, the Federation has already dealt with it once. This variant does bring its own wrinkles, of course. With a technology so ubiquitous as holography, a medium accepted by the general population as just entertainment, the idea that a construct has the potential to become self-aware and lead their own lives raises some uncomfortable questions, and that's before you consider just how many of those entertainment programs involve fucking. You could argue that the EMH's learning routines mean only his framework offers this possibility, but then that learning capability was only ever meant to be for improving medical treatment, yet here we are. Life, finds a way. Perhaps all of this explains why the judge was so hesitant to pass a blanket ruling. The consequences of such a decision would inevitably be both significant and widespread. Of course, the consequences of not doing it could be some proper Skynet shit, but I'm sure there's no reason to worry about that. Before we go, there is one other thing of interest in this episode, and one that was easily missed. When B'Elanna's talking to her dad and saying she might name baby Lana Miral, he says, "Your mother would have liked that." Would have liked. Past tense. Perhaps that's just a script fucko. Perhaps it's John Torres accidentally letting slip that he internalizes what he did by thinking of her as dead. Or perhaps it's an implication that she has actually died. This would lend some credence to the events of Barge of the Dead, despite that episode itself heavily implying that the whole thing was just woo when B'Elanna's mum said she might see her back home. That B'Elanna doesn't react to the line herself would suggest it's an error, though it's fair to assume she had some other stuff on her mind at the time. If nothing else, it shows us that something as simple as a misplaced tense can have unintended implications for a story, so it provides a good opportunity to remind ourselves of something I've said a few times before. It's fun to take the piss and point out holes, but we should all be under no illusion about just how difficult the job of a writer can be. End of episode.
Are we allowed in here?
No, but everybody who matters is somewhere else.
Fair enough. Is it time for hijinks and capers and all that shite?
Such as?
I don't know. Setting the warp core to explode and blow up the ship.
You've not really thought that through, have you? What with us being on the ship and all?
Honestly, no. I thought as far as Kaboom and kinda got sidetracked. Maybe we could shoot something.
Not a chance. This is main engineering, not the sort of place they just keep random weapons in an unsecured box. You'd have to be a complete fucking idiot to do that.
That's a fair point. So, we're just gonna take a shit in here too then, are we?
Why change a working formula? Woof.